All right, so for fluency today, we have to find the difference between 89 and 1700ths and 32 and 753 thousandths. So we've been working with these words for a while now, and we know that difference now means to subtract. Okay, so we have to subtract 8, 9, point 1, 7 from, so we're subtracting from, and we have to line up our digits and our decimal points. So the 2 is in the ones place, so I put the 2 underneath the 9 in the ones place. The 3 is in the tens place, so I put the 3 underneath the 8 in the tens place. 7 is in the tenths. 5 is in the hundredths, and 3 in the thousandths. And then we subtract. Okay, well, I have a placeholder, so I need to put a 0 there. Before I start subtracting, I need to make sure I drop my decimal point down. So now I have to do 0 minus 3. Can't do 0 minus 3, so I take from the 7, make that at a 6, and then the 0 becomes a 10. Now I can do 10 minus 3, which is 7. 6 minus 5 is 1. 1 minus 7, well, I can't do that, so I got to go to the 9. The 9 becomes an 8. And then the 1 becomes an 11. Okay, so now I want you to finish this. We're 11 minus 7, 8 minus 2, and then 8 minus 3. And then you'll get your answer. All right, so let's move on to finding the product. Okay, product we've been working with for a while now. So product means that we have to multiply. So when we multiply, we first write out the problem as if there's no decimals. So 1, 5, 2 times, and line up our digits, 8, 9, and then we can begin to multiply. Starting with our 9. 9 times 2, 18. 9 times 5 is 45, plus the 1 is 46. 9 times 1, 9. 9 plus 4 is 13. So I put my 3. And since I have nowhere else to put the 1, so I put next to the 3. Well, I'm done with my 9, so I cross out the 9. Oops, let me bring those to the front. So I cross my 9 out, and now I have to put a 0 below the 8 to stay in line with the 10's place value when I begin to multiply. So 8 times 2, and I can delete 4, and I can delete 1 because I'm done with those. 8 times 2, 16, so I put my 6. Bring up my 1. 8 times 5 is 40, plus 1, 41. 8 times 1 is 8, and then 8 plus 4 is 12. So I put my 2 below the 1, and then I can put my 1 next to the 2. And then I begin to add. So I add those up. Once I've added, now remember, we have to sit here and count the numbers behind the decimal point. So I have a 2, so that's one finger being held up. And then I have an 8 and a 9. And that's another 2 numbers held up. So in all, there is a 2, an 8, and a 9 behind the decimal point. So once you've added this up, you need to then swoop your decimal into its right spot. Okay? The last one says, what is the quotient of 86 divided by 12? Well, quotient means to divide. So your first number, when it's written out like that, is your dividend. So 86 goes inside. And 12 goes on the outside. We follow the same rules that we have been by asking ourselves our questions. How many times does 12 go into the number in the house? So let's start off by asking ourselves, how many times does 12 go into 8? Well, 12 times 1 is 12, so that's too big. So I have to do 12 times 0. So I put a 0 below the 8 because 12 times 0 is 0. I subtract. 8 minus 0 is 8. And then I have to bring down the 6. And then I have to ask myself, 8, 12, how many times does 12 go into 86? Because I brought that 6 down. Well, 12 times 7 is 84. And that's closest I'm going to get. So I put a 7. And I put an 8 and a 4. And then I subtract. 6 minus 4 is 2. 8, oops, I forgot to put my subtraction sign. Whoopsies. 8 minus 8 is 0. Well, remember, since this is a whole number, I can place a decimal point behind the 6 and add 2 zeros as a place value. Oops, and we're going to need more zeros. And you will have those. So now, since I put a decimal point, I got to shoot it straight up. Okay? So now I have a 0 I can bring down. So let me bring down that 0. And then I have to ask myself, how many times does 12 go into 20? 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. So 24 is too big, so it has to be 1. So I put a 1 there, and then I put a 12 below the 20. And then I have to subtract that. Well, 0 minus 2 I can't do, so that 2 becomes a 1. And then the 0 becomes a 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. And I need another 8, and you will have that there. You don't have to worry about this. So I put an 8, and then I can bring down the 0. Okay? So if I bring down that 0, bring down that 0, I get 80. And let me get you another 0. I get 80. And I have to ask myself, how many times does 12 go into 80? And the answer will be 6. Because 6 times 12 is 72. So I put my 7. And then I put a 2. And then I begin to subtract. 0 minus 2, can't do, so that 8 becomes a 7. And then the 0 becomes a 10. So 10 minus 2 is 8. And remember, we can always add more zeros if we need to. So, oops, if I put this 8 here, and if I wanted to add another 0, I could, and I would get 80. And we already did 80. And it was 6, then we got 72. So it would keep going. 80 would continuously come up, and we would continuously have to be putting 6 up here. So 6 is a repeating decimal. So your answer would be 7.166666666666666 for repeating. So in this case, I always tell you to do 2 decimal points behind the 2 numbers behind the decimal point, unless the answer specifies differently. So your answer could be 7.16, and then we would put a little line above the 6 to show that it's a repeating decimal. Okay, so that's fluency.